Have you ever been in a situation where you're cooking a piece of venison and it comes out extremely tough and you end up basically pulling a muscle in your jaw, or it has about as much flavor as a piece of cardboard? I'm going to be breaking down my top 3 favorite tips on how to make your venison a 10 out of 10. The piece of meat I'm using in this video, it's actually a neck roast. When I pulled it out of my freezer, I thought it was a tenderloin. The process though is generally the same for prepping your meat. My top tip out of these 3 is to trim your meat extremely well. I think a lot of people do not take enough time on this step, and it makes all the difference in the finished product. For instance, I think a lot of people think that fat is a good thing on their meat because, it's adding basically flavor and stuff. It does add a lot of flavor, but I personally do not like the taste of it, so that's something I always trim. Another thing is basically your connective tissue, the silver skin. All these things just add into the toughness of the cut and also to the flavor. How I'm going to be cooking this meat is I'm going to be making kebabs. So I'm basically just trimming basically fat and gristle. Now that we've trimmed our meat, point number 2 is to marinate your venison. In my opinion, using a marinade makes a huge difference in how your venison comes out. It helps to retain its juice when it's cooking, provides flavor throughout the whole piece of meat. And marinades can also help break down and make your meat more tender, especially if you're using more of an acidic marinade. First off, there's some great marinade recipes online for venison. I've used them before. This is not a marinade recipe, but this is just stuff that I like to use from time to time, and I think it's gonna make a good marinade for these kebabs. Just basically winging this, I'm just gonna go to what looks good to me. It's not very hot. I personally like to let it sit at least overnight. Some people only like to marinate their meat for like 2 hours. It really comes down to basically just personal preference. I found that cooking wild game over an open flame makes all the difference, whether that be smoking it, grilling it, or even cooking it over a campfire style like this. That smoky charred flavor just makes all the difference in wild game. But my last point is about not overcooking your venison. I feel like too often people will just cook their venison way beyond what it needs to be cooked to, and it ends up coming out a lot tougher, dry, and there's basically no juice in it, and really just not ideal. If I only ate venison like that, I would kind of have a bad taste in my mouth myself. Personally, I like my meat to be about medium, but technically to kill all pathogens and bad bacteria, it needs to hit an internal temperature of 165. I really do not want you to get sick from cooking venison, so take those steps that you feel most comfortable with. I'd recommend you using a meat thermometer and making sure and only cooking it to 165 and not 185 or 200. Here's the moment of truth, about to try it. That honestly turned out a lot better than I was even expecting. I really believe these 3 tips, if you give them a shot, will take your venison to the next level. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.